This is Dr.RED Panda.
You've probably heard the glamorous stories of child stars, fame, fortune, and millions of fans. But what if I told you that behind the spotlight lies trauma, control, and exploitation? From Hollywood's golden age to today's TikTok kidfluencers, the dark truth hasn't really changed. Hi, I'm Dr. Red Panda, and today we're diving into the disturbing world of child fame, past and present. Hollywood's broken dreams. When we think of child stars, we often imagine fairy tales. A cute kid, spotted by a talent scout, catapulted into stardom, showered with money and fame. But the reality is far darker. For many children, Hollywood was less of a dream factory and more of a machine that consumed their childhood, their innocence, and sometimes their entire lives. Take Shirley Temple, the most famous child star of the 1930s. Audiences adored her curls, her songs, and her smile. But what most people didn't know is that behind the scenes, Temple was pushed through grueling schedules, often working 6 days a week, forced to act far beyond her years. She became the face of innocence, even as she was denied her own. Fast forward to the late 20th century, and the story repeats itself. Macaulay Culkin, the star of Home Alone, was one of the most recognizable kids on the planet. But off-camera, his childhood was falling apart. He was trapped in lawsuits over his own money, manipulated by his father, and eventually burned out before he even reached adulthood. And then there's Britney Spears. While she became a global icon, her beginnings as a Disney child performer laid the groundwork for a lifetime of control and exploitation. What was sold to the public as family entertainment was, in many ways, the commodification of children. This is the pattern. Hollywood celebrated these kids as if they were little miracles, while quietly stripping them of agency. Every laugh, every dance, every tear was monetized. And when they grew older, no longer the adorable child audiences craved, they were often discarded, left to face the wreckage of a stolen childhood. But here's the most disturbing part. This isn't just history. The exploitation of children didn't end with Hollywood's golden age. It simply evolved. Today, it's not just movie studios or record labels profiting off young talent. The rise of social media has given us a new generation of child stars, kidfluencers. And unlike Shirley Temple or Britney Spears, these kids don't even have the limited protections of Hollywood contracts. Their lives are monetized 24/7, and often, it's their own parents running the show. Puppet masters, parents, agents, and legal loopholes. When a child becomes famous, the world sees glitz and glamour. But behind the scenes, adults are often pulling the strings, not always with the child's best interests at heart. Historically, parents were the first gatekeepers. Some genuinely wanted to give their children opportunities, while others saw them as investments. Macaulay Culkin's father, for example, controlled his career until Culkin famously emancipated himself. The very people who should have protected these kids became the source of their manipulation. Then came agents and managers. Without proper oversight, they pushed children into roles that were detrimental to their mental health, with the mantra that the show must go on. Even when laws were put in place, they often fell short. The Coogan Law, created after child actor Jackie Coogan found his parents had squandered his fortune, required a portion of a child's income to be held in trust, but loopholes persisted, and children still had little control. The exploitation was also psychological and physical. Children were overworked, isolated from their peers, and denied a normal childhood. They were expected to perform under adult pressure, prioritizing their public persona over their personal identity. They weren't kids. They were commodities. The power imbalance in this system normalized abuse, leaving child stars vulnerable to harassment and predatory behavior. The adults held all the power and the children had none. This problem isn't just a relic of old Hollywood. The same dynamics exist today, amplified by social media. Parents now film their children's lives for YouTube and TikTok, turning private moments into monetized content. There are no clear labor laws for these kidfluencers, no financial protections, and the children often have no say. The uncomfortable truth is that the very people who should have been the guardians of childhood, parents, managers, and the legal system, often became the exploiters. Without meaningful change, this cycle will continue to repeat. The psychological price of fame. If money and fame were enough to guarantee happiness, then child stars should be the happiest people in the world. But history tells us the opposite story. Behind the smiles and red carpet appearances lies an epidemic of anxiety, depression, and identity crises, scars that fame leaves long after the cameras stop rolling. One of the most obvious costs is the loss of a normal childhood. For most kids, life is about play, school, and friendships. For child stars, it's about auditions, rehearsals, and public image. Many of them grow up in studios instead of playgrounds, surrounded not by peers, but by adults telling them how to act, dress, and behave. This isolation deprives them of the social skills and emotional grounding that ordinary childhood provides. But the harm runs deeper. When your identity is built around being a star, you're forced to perform not just on stage or screen, but in everyday life. Fans expect perfection. Studios demand reliability. Imagine being 10 years old and already worrying about ratings, ticket sales, and headlines. That pressure is crushing. Many child celebrities learn to suppress their true feelings because vulnerability is seen as weakness. Over time, they forget who they are outside of the character or persona the public consumes. Psychologists call this identity foreclosure, when a child commits to a role before they've had the chance to explore who they really are. A kid who's always the funny one or the cute one may feel trapped in that label, even as they grow up and change. The disconnect between their inner self and outer persona creates anxiety, self-doubt, and, in many cases, depression. And when the spotlight fades, the fallout can be brutal. Many child stars struggle with what some experts call post-fame depression. After years of constant attention, suddenly being ignored feels like erasure. If the world only loved you as a child prodigy, who are you as an adult? This identity crisis has led many former child stars to addiction, reckless behavior, or even tragedy. Think of stars like Dana Plato from Different Strokes or Amanda Bynes, whose struggles with mental health became tabloid fodder. Another overlooked issue is trauma from exploitation and abuse. Numerous child stars have revealed that behind the scenes, they faced harassment or manipulation from adults in positions of power. Because they were conditioned to obey, they often couldn't say no. The result is deep-seated trauma that resurfaces in adulthood, sometimes in the form of PTSD, sometimes in cycles of toxic relationships. Even in modern times, the psychological risks remain high. Kidfluencers on YouTube and TikTok are often exposed to relentless online scrutiny. Imagine growing up reading millions of strangers commenting on your appearance, personality, or worth. Studies show that early exposure to such scrutiny increases risks of eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and chronic anxiety. For children whose parents monetize their lives, the betrayal can feel even deeper. The people they trusted most turn their privacy into profit. What makes this all the more tragic is that these kids rarely have a choice. They didn't sign up for fame. Adults signed them up. And even if they wanted out, the machine is hard to escape. Fame is sticky. Once you're known forever. The internet never forgets, and childhood mistakes, awkward phases, or embarrassing content live online for decades. In the end, the psychological price of fame is often invisible but devastating. Childhood is supposed to be a time of discovery, safety, and growth. For many child stars, it becomes a stage where they are never allowed to take off the costume. And that cost, the loss of self, is something no paycheck can ever repay. From Disney to TikTok, the new face of child fame. If you think the age of exploited child stars ended with Hollywood's golden years, think again. The stage may look different. Fewer movie sets, more ring lights, but the underlying dynamics of child fame have simply evolved. Today, the world of Disney Channel prodigies and TikTok kidfluencers shows us that the business of childhood fame is alive, thriving, and arguably more dangerous than ever. The early 2000s gave us the era of Disney Channel and Nickelodeon stars. On the surface, it looked like harmless fun, with sitcoms and wholesome characters. But many of these stars endured enormous pressure. Former actors have spoken out about exploitative environments, and Disney alumni like Demi Lovato and Miley Cyrus have described struggles with identity and mental health after being thrust into fame at a young age. The formula was simple: cast kids who could sing, dance, or act, market them as relatable idols, and profit from their music, merchandise, and appearances. These young actors weren't just entertainers. They were carefully manufactured brands. Like many before them, they paid the price with their sense of self. If Disney was a controlled factory for child stars, social media blew the doors wide open. Today, anyone can become a child celebrity with a smartphone. Platforms like YouTube and TikTok have given rise to kidfluencers, children whose daily lives are broadcast to millions. Ryan Kaji of Ryan's World became a multimillionaire reviewing toys. While it seems harmless, the reality is far more complicated. Unlike child actors in Hollywood, many kidfluencers lack formal protections. In the US, child labor laws exist for film and TV but not for online platforms. This means parents can film their kids for hours, upload private moments, and collect revenue, often with no legal requirement to save earnings for the child's future. For some families, the line between parenting and profiting is disturbingly blurred. Then comes the issue of privacy. Childhood is meant to be a time for mistakes to be forgotten, but for kidfluencers, every tantrum or awkward phase is uploaded permanently to the internet. Their entire childhood may be consumed by strangers and monetized by algorithms. Unlike Hollywood stars who could eventually walk away, today's kidfluencers have no escape. Their digital footprint is permanent. The pressure to perform is relentless. Platforms incentivize constant engagement, which turns playtime into production time. Instead of playing for fun, a child might be playing for views and ad revenue. This subtle shift from childhood to business robs these kids of the carefree exploration that should define their early years. Finally, there's the emotional toll of online scrutiny. While a Disney star might read criticism in tabloids, kidfluencers are exposed to millions of unfiltered comments. Growing up under that kind of microscope can warp a child's self-image and create a lifelong craving or fear of external validation. In many ways, this new digital fame is even darker than old Hollywood. At least child actors had unions and some industry regulations. Kidfluencers often have none of that. Their managers are their parents, their sets are their homes, and their audience is the entire world. The faces have changed, from Shirley Temple to Miley Cyrus to a 7-year-old unboxing toys on YouTube, but the truth remains the same. Child fame is rarely a dream come true. Whether in Hollywood studios or TikTok bedrooms, it's still a machine that consumes childhood and leaves scars behind. What does childhood really mean in the age of fame? One thing is clear from Shirley Temple to today's kidfluencers. Childhood fame is a machine that feeds on innocence, packages childhood and sells it to the masses. The question is, what is childhood really worth? Is it worth trading for fame and money? Or is the simple right to grow up privately more valuable? History shows a heartbreakingly consistent pattern. Child stars are celebrated and then grow up scarred. From Judy Garland to modern-day influencers, they struggle to find their identity outside the image created for them. And we, the audience, play a role in this cycle. Our clicks and subscriptions fuel the demand, and in turn, families and platforms respond. The conversation is more urgent than ever in the digital age. While some countries like France are creating laws to protect child influencers' income, regulation often lags behind technology. Maybe the real question is how to redefine success. Instead of glorifying fame, could we value children for just being children, curious, playful, and imperfect? Childhood is the one thing you can never get back. Once it's gone, no amount of money or fame can replace it. And that brings me to you, the audience. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think child fame should be banned altogether? Or is there a way to make it safer? If you were a parent, would you ever let your child become a star in Hollywood, on YouTube, or on TikTok? Drop your opinions in the comments. This is not just history. It's happening right now, and your voice matters in shaping the conversation. And that's a wrap for this episode of the video. I'm Dr. Red Panda, If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Until next time, take care.